So the theme is enthusiasm. And as many of you know, I like to start my talks looking at the gospel according to Merriam-Webster, so that we can actually get a sense of what the nature of these words mean that we're inquiring into and trying to bring into our lives. So one definition of enthusiasm, and the first one that actually occurs in the dictionary, is belief in special revelations of the Holy Spirit. That is the first definition that you come to of the word enthusiasm. And after the semicolon, it then says religious fanaticism. Now, what's interesting about all of that is that if we really look at the word fanatic, because then I wanted to know what that meant. I wanted to dig a little deeper into that. Fanaticism, the definition is marked by excessive enthusiasm and often intense, uncritical devotion. Doesn't necessarily sound in the definition as bad as the word sounds, simply because how the word has come to be known in our general walk in life. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The second definition, though, is strong excitement or feeling. Ardor, something inspiring zeal or fervor. And again, the whole idea of zeal and zealots, and it's all very bad and very scary and very oppressive, but maybe not so much when we're talking about these words in the spiritual realm, in spiritual life. These words actually speak to devotion and commitment and to a searching and a longing for what is the nature of enthusiasm in our lives. So I like to talk about the myth of things, and some of you may have seen that the title for this sermon was The Myth of Enthusiasm from the Bottom Up. And my first myth that I'd like to talk about is that enthusiasm is about being happy. We really think that that second definition of enthusiasm is the sum total of it. But really, if we're looking at belief in special revelations of the Holy Spirit, sometimes the revelations of the Holy Spirit are not fun. They're not good news, because often it means some place in our lives where we have become quite comfortable, maybe stagnant, is now a place that we're going to have to do some work at, breathe some life into, and maybe step out into the world in a way that we actually just don't want to. We'd rather just stay where we are and do what we're doing. But when the revelations of the Spirit come, they actually don't come by permission, and they don't come asking if you like them or not. Ask Moses. Some of the first thoughts that come to mind when we hear the word enthusiasm usually have to do with people jumping up and down, and they're excited and they're joyful, they don't have a care in the world. That's like enthusiasm, like yay, enthusiasm. Many of these people are often ready to interact with the world positively in all matters, in all things. Sometimes these people are often beautiful, they're very fit, they look younger than their age, they're wealthy, their children are either curing cancer or rescuing refugees. They celebrate life and everything, and they're welcoming of their eventual death. And in short, when we think about enthusiasm, we think about characters that we see on television and in movies, but that doesn't necessarily match regular life. Any of you who have ever been in New York City and been on any subway, tell me, does that match the experience? Are people enthused to be hundreds of feet below the ground surrounded by people that they don't know and would prefer never to see. But if we look, really look, and inquire into that definition of the special revelations of the Holy Spirit, then we're talking about the manifestation of a different kind of enthusiasm, not entertainment, but actually enlightenment. And we're talking about, as spiritual people, there are questions for us to ask ourselves, because if enthusiasm is not about always being happy, you might want to ask yourself, what has God revealed to you recently? In dreams, in people that you don't even know sometimes walking up and saying things to you. And you're kind of like, who are you talking to? That kind of revelation. What's being revealed to you? What are you seeing? And then have you acted on what you've seen? Or has the revelation kind of devolved into you talking yourself into thinking that you're crazy for this idea of spiritual empowerment for yourself and the people around you? Like you've tried to push it so far away that it almost starts to fall into the realm of just disbelief. Like it couldn't be you. Like that couldn't be you to actually take leadership somewhere, or it couldn't be you to actually forgive what others would say is unforgivable. See, that is a place where enthusiasm, not the jumping up and down movie version, but truly the dwelling with the Holy Spirit and the comfort with moving through that, becomes a new opportunity for spiritual people. The second myth is that enthusiasm should be a natural state of affairs. So even if we're staying with that first definition of these revelations, that you should just be, kind of like standing on the street, just being revealed every minute of every day, like, like that, like a sci-fi movie. But maybe there's a different context for us to hold this kind of enthusiasm, this idea of being directly connected and directed by the divine. So in Science of Mind, it tells us that the personality is a direct reflection of the soul. So however much we may be invested in our personality and how people see us, your personality is actually, in this school of thinking, just a direct reflection of your soul. And as you begin to work with your personality, with the things that you want to be, the things how you want to appear, what you want to make available to people, you're basically pulling in different aspects that heal and develop your very soul. In that, enthusiasm is both an adjective and a noun inside this understanding. So there is yet another definition of enthusiasm that's in Science of Mind specifically, which says a keen interest in people and things at home and abroad. It has been called the fortune teller of life. Enthusiasm is compelling and sweeps everything before it. So if you will, rather than it being this description of emotion, it becomes a way of being. So if we're thinking about this natural state, rather than thinking about a natural state of jumping up and down and being happy all the time, maybe it's a natural state that we can develop ourselves into to be keenly concerned and aware of the surroundings and the people immediately around us, and expand that such that you don't actually need to know something from the news to know that something is going on in another part of the world that needs prayer. that you can offer a prayer for, simply because you have made yourself and trained yourself and opened yourself enough to be aware of not just yourself. Because one of the things that I probably will be saying the entire time that I am preaching or involved in ministry is that our fascination with ourselves is our greatest hurdle to living the lives of spiritual development that we want. And it's not to say that you shouldn't be concerned with yourself, that you don't want to develop yourself, but it's not just for you. We are all lights in this world, and there has not been a time recently where light has been needed more than now. And not just so that you can feel good and survive what's going on in the world. Because at this point, survival time is over. Actually, there is a spiritual offensive that is necessary to remind humanity who we are. And in the words of Audre Lorde, your silence will not save you. Thinking that you can have thoughts about how things should be and not say them will not save you. Because the stakes are just too high at this point. So when we talk about, or when I say, creating this natural state, it really is looking to see what is really Spirit revealing to you. What are your assignments? What's being given to you uniquely? And here's the bad news. Here's the real bad news, if you didn't think it was bad enough already. Here's the real bad news. When something is divinely given to you, nobody else is getting that assignment. It doesn't just pass on like a house or a car, or because you've decided you're not going to do anything about it, that it gets reassigned. This is not like, the hiring hall. When Spirit gives you something, it is uniquely for you. And have you ever had that experience where you just cannot rest? Your soul will not rest because that thing that has been given to you, when not acted upon, just starts to gnaw at you. And the fastest way around it is through it. You cannot run and you cannot hide. And the good news, though, is that whatever has been given uniquely to you, you will also be given everything you need to fulfill on that. Because that is the nature of divine mind. There is no separation. Like we just sang, no separation at all. But we have to work to remind ourselves that we are not separated. And in the moment when we recognize that we are not separated, that we are wholly, fully connected, directly accessing the forces of the universe, there is nothing that cannot be done. There is nothing that cannot be accomplished. So when we talk about enthusiasm, we're talking about that real, honest state of affairs where you know yourself to be completely connected to the divine. The third and final myth is that enthusiasm is an experience that happens to us. That it's something that happens to us. So that we're kind of going through life, and then something exterior happens, and then we get enthusiastic. We get enthused. Maybe. But we could say that enthusiasm actually starts from the bottom up. It starts at those moments when you are the most vulnerable. Enthusiasm starts in those moments where all hope is lost. Enthusiasm starts in the moments when your heart is broken wide open. Because we don't generally get excited with, my relationship is over, he left me, isn't that awesome? Sometimes it's like that. Sometimes it's like, oh, thank God. Crazy fool is gone. But not normally. I just got laid off. Oh, wow, I got laid off. No, it's not usually like that. It's like, oh, my God, how am I going to pay my mortgage? What am I going to do? That is the moment when enthusiasm actually begins, because it's the lived experience. It's accessing the divine. It's actually having the moments when there is no other direction but through and towards what has uniquely been given to you. Enthusiasm is not happening to you. Enthusiasm is using you so that others might be enthused or become comfortable with the idea that if they see you doing what you know has been given to you to do, it might actually inspire them to do what they have uniquely been given to do. As opposed to thinking that this is a solo experience that nobody else can help with. When we talk about the revelations of God, we are talking about the moments when you are sometimes presented with information that you can't possibly have known before. You are immediately drawn into the world of the unknowing of God, of the mystery of the divine. And that's fine. You don't have to know everything. Much as it's going to pain your ego to know, you really don't have to know everything. But where you can spend quality time is in preparing yourself such that when that moment of unknowing happens, you are able to just be in it and let the revelation come and be with you and let it guide you rather than you trying to control it. The thought about who we are and who we can be was created before all of us were born. It lives in the mind of the divine, such that when we manifest here, all we're doing is following an assignment. And I don't mean that to mean that you have no control and no aegis in your life. But it does mean that we don't have to be afraid of the revelations that are coming because they were already there. And what happens is, as we begin to pull the spiritual blinders away, that when we become comfortable with interacting with the divine, then things just become clearer. We're able to see ourselves inside of these revelations and these actions to take. To close, I would just say that my friend Alan was one of the most authentic people that I ever knew. Often laughing at the wrong thing, loud. Spending a great deal of time just becoming comfortable with God in him and through him. He was someone who he was supposed to be dead long ago. There are any number of doctors who came to his bedside and then came out to the waiting room and said to us, well, we don't think he's, we think you should prepare yourselves because we don't think he's going to make it through the night. We're like, child, please. We don't call him Lazarus for nothing. You're not the first, and you won't be the last, who's going to tell us that this is it. He left when he left. But there'll be no one who can say that his life was not used up and that his life had not been given to God. There's no one who can have that testimony. That is a life well lived. So if you're going to live a life of enthusiasm, live one where you're taking in the spiritual gifts and the revelations that are being made available to you and use them. Your soul will be at rest and the world will be added onto by your contribution. Thank you so much and God bless you.